Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you can all hear me. If you can't, turn your camera on really quickly and shout or wave or something, because all I can see is a load of icons, which is actually quite unnerving. So yeah, sorry for starting a few minutes late. We're still expecting another maybe 8 or 9 people to join us, but we obviously don't leave you guys waiting. So like I say, thank you very much. Just to let you know, this meeting is being recorded. I hope if anyone has an issue with that, please let me know ASAP. The meeting's been recorded, and we'll also send a link out for this meeting so you can watch it and catch up on things later if you need to. Richard, please wave. So I think most of you, well, we've met, both Rich and I have met most of you at least once or twice. So obviously I'm on the sales side of things, Richard is on the service and the application side of things. What we've done, because we're technical geniuses and we didn't want to risk getting it horribly wrong, we've done a pre-recorded video. So it takes about half an hour, 35 minutes. We're going to run through some hardware, run through some software, and then at the end of that, we'll go live again and open it to questions and answers. So please feel free to either drop me an email. If you can't do it via Teams, there's a chat function in Teams, so please submit something there, or even in the Q&A section. But the idea is we get to the end and then sort of answer any questions that anybody has got. So without further ado, look like someone just dropped off then. Without further ado, we're going to go to the video. So it's about 35 minutes long, and we'll speak to you on the other side. Okay, this is where it gets all technical, so wish me luck. And we'll be turning our mics and camera off as well. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. Okay, so now let's have a quick look at the hardware. So there are 3 systems in the Ansett family of multi-NC units. We have the 2300, which is a direct injection mechanism, but uses a high temperature combustion furnace. We have the 3300, which is a flow injection system, but again, high temperature combustion. And the 4300, again, flow injection, but uses a UV cell to do the combustion. This system here is our demonstration model. We've had this now for a couple of months, and as you can see, this is the NC3300. It has a variety of different auto samplers. It can have different nitrogen options. We'll go into those in a little more detail, but that's just a quick sort of introduction to the hardware. Richard's now going to do a similar thing with the software.
Okay, so this is the main screen for MultiWin Pro. As you can see, it's in a Windows environment. We've got the main menus along the top. Just going to have a quick run through those. So we've got first up is program. Here we cover the program settings. We can manage the users and we can change the users from here. We've got the methods menu for setting up new methods or loading up previous ones. Again, sequences, loading up previous sequences or making up a new one. Calibrations, we can check out our previous calibrations, and also the next one along for results. We can look at previous results, or we can from here we can actually set up a PDF report, or we can export to Excel. In the device menu, we can initialize the instrument from here, switch the gas flows on and off, or we can align the sampler. The view menu is for customizing the desktop basically. And next one along is the help, which we can contact service from here, or we can access the MultiWin Pro manual. So on the left hand side is the instrument status box. We can initialize the instrument from here as well. This covers the both detectors, the carbon NDIR and the CLD for the TN, or the CHD, depending which one you're using. Also, we will have the gas flows for the oxygen. This will cover the in and the out. So you know if you've got a leak, it should be normally 160 mils going in, and should be 160 plus or minus 5 coming out. So if we're looking at MPOC, then we'll have the purge value here for purging off any inorganics. Next one down is the temperature, which just basically feeds back the furnace temperature and the Peltier cooler. And just below that, we've just got the instrument info. And this covers what's connected to it, basically, which would be the sampler, the carbon detector, the nitrogen detector, what rack size is in the sampler, etc. So that covers the introduction to the software.
Okay, so the first part of the hardware I'm going to talk about is the auto sampler. It's how we actually introduce the sample into the system. It's worth pointing out you can do manual injection, just so you're aware of that if you have low sample throughput. So on the 33 and the same with the 43, we have a choice of 3 different auto samplers. We have a small capacity 10 position auto sampler that takes 10 vials, 50 ml vials. There's a 21 position auto sampler, 21 50 ml vials. They both hang off the side here, so it decreases the footprint. And each of those has a dilution option, so effectively you can double the sample quantity with automated dilution options. And the third option for both the 33 and the 43 is this system here. Now this is the AS Vario. Vario as in variable different racks. It has a choice of racks, anything from 20 100 ml shot bottles, for example. It's a 47 position option, there's a 52 position option, a 72 position option, and then there's this one, which is 146 samples, and it uses nice small test tubes, 12 ml vials, just like this one. So that's for your high throughput laboratory. It also has some additional features such as external rinse. So if you have particularly sticky or unpleasant matrices, you're rinsing the outside and the inside of the needle. And it has something on this called parallel purging. So if you're doing NPOC, non-purgeable organic carbon, as you are injecting and measuring sample 1, it is the second needle is sitting in sample 2. It is acidifying that sample and purging off the inorganic carbon before the measurements. But those are the auto sampler options available for the 33 and the 4300. The 2300 has a different injection mechanism, which I'll explain in a bit more detail in a moment. But the auto sampler sits on the top of the instrument because it only has to travel a very short distance to the injection chamber. That has 2 rack options. There's a 60 position, which uses 8 ml vials, and there's a 112 position, which uses standard 2 ml HPLC vials. So those are the options regarding the auto sampler. So now Rich is going to show you how to set up the method within the software.
Okay, so we're ready to set up a method within MultiWin Pro. And this is as easy as going to the Methods tab at the top, clicking on it. And here it opens the Methods window. You can see I've got a previous total carbon method that was previously set up. So to add a new method or create one, we go down to the bottom to the Add button. And for this, we're going to create a TOC method. So you can see the method, or the beginnings of the method is just located here. We just click on that. And then over to the right-hand side is where we can fine-tune the method. So you can see at the top, we've got the method name, which at the moment is just a date and time stamp. We can rename that whatever we want. If we made a mistake, we can change the method type. We could run TOC TN, for example. Here you can give a description and a comment. But below is where we actually sort of fine-tune the method. So, for example, the amount of replicates. So we're running 2 from 3. We could run 2 from 5 or 5 from 5, for example. We've got a sample volume of 500. So with this instrument, it's 100 microliters all the way up to 1 mil that we could change the sample volume to. And we've got the default rinse volume of 2 mil. And we've also got a stirring speed set for the stirrer bars within the vials. and the default furnace temperature of 750 degrees. Below this, we've got all the peak start, peak end parameters for the integrator. And then below that, we've got convert to CODs and BODs if you need those results. Set up on the method. With everything that you set up on the method, we just tick this, apply all. So that covers the methods section on this.
Okay, so the sample is being injected by one or other of the different auto-samplers, and they all have different injection volumes. So the 33 and the 43 are pretty similar. You can normally go from 100 microliters up to 1 mil quite easily. There is a high sensitivity version that allows you to go up to 3 mil injection, and there's even a special pharma version that allows you to go up to a 20 mil injection. But most people are working around about sort of half a mil. And then the direct injection option, the one that sits on top, because we're just filling a syringe, it does use a smaller capacity syringe. So we're working there with typically 50 microliters, again up to a mil, but people are normally injecting about 250 microliters. So there are some various options to consider. But the sample is then injected into the top of the instrument here, and it goes into either the combustion furnace or the UV cell. Now the combustion furnace on each system is the same. We use a platinum-based catalyst. You can use cerium oxide for some applications. 90% of people use the platinum-based catalyst. Now we normally run at about 720 degrees. We can go as high as 900 if it's particularly sort of difficult samples to break down, but most people are running at about 720 degrees. The reason we can go that high is that the furnace is made of metal parts. There's no plastic in there, so don't worry about any plastic melting. The catalyst will typically last you about a year or so. It's one of the things that a lot of times the engineers will change at the preventive maintenance visit. Again, if you're a high throughput lab or particularly dirty samples, then you might change the catalyst a bit more often. It's very simple. Side panel comes off, combustion tube sits in the furnace, take it out, empty it. You can regenerate the catalyst a couple of times or just refill it back up. It's very easy to do. And then if you have the UV option, we use two different UV wavelengths. We use 185 and 254 nanometers to make sure we're getting very, very sort of good combustion, very efficient combustion. And that helps with the detection limits on both of these systems. The 2100 to the 2300 goes from a lower limit of 50 parts per billion of carbon, whereas this system will go down to 5 parts per billion, and the high sensitivity will go down to 1 part per billion. So very, very sensitive. And they'll all go up to 30,000 parts per million without any sample dilution. The inorganics chamber is in here for things like TIC, and in fact we can measure TIC, TOC, TC by difference. We do NPOC, we can even do DOC, POC, or something called NPOC plus. So lots of different mechanisms and lots of different ways of measuring the carbon levels we're interested in. So Richard is now going to show you how to set up a calibration on the new software.
Okay, so we're now ready to set up a calibration, and similar just to running a sequence, we go to add new sequence, and you can see just this little icon here is the calibration build wizard. So we click on this. This opens the calibration wizard, and straight away we've got a choice of fixed volume, fixed concentration. We've got the calibration points, and we've got this button on the right, top right, basically select method. Which method do we want to use to set up this calibration? So we're going to use this previously set up TC method. Press OK. And now you can see we're going to use fixed volume rather than fixed concentration. So it's going to be a 500 microliter injection. We are going to have 3 points with 3 replicates, and we'll just do like a 1, 5 and 10 ppm. We can, once the calibration's taken place, the software will run a check and check the linearity. The software will then ignore, ask, or cancel. So unlike the previous multi-win, where you had to do a calibration, then check the calibration results and then put your sequence on, this multi-win Pro allows you to do the calibration, then go straight into a sample sequence. So therefore we can run the calibration and we can run this linearity check, and the software will have a look at the three states here: ignore, ask, or cancel. So we can do a quick check on the calibration. So on the bottom left you can see we've got a preparation water blank. So it's actually the carbon value of the water that's been used in the standard makeup. So you can have this as set values, or you can get the system to actually measure it. So we'll get the system to measure the value. So once this is done, it's nice and easy. We can just press apply. Calibration with that name already exists, so I'll just change that and give it today's date. There we go. So you can see now the sequence is filled out with the calibration and in what vial that it's going to be in. This is just the calculation step. Now we can go, like I said before, unlike the previous multi-win software, you would run the calibration, that would be it. With this one in multi-win Pro, we can actually now go straight into the sequence. So again, we go to add by method, and we can run these TC samples. So vial 5, vial 6. You can change the names here, and you can also, like we discussed before, you can actually go into the individual step parameters for each one. You could run different reps, you can run different methods for each one, and at the end of it we can also go into these control steps and we can put the system into standby or turn off. So we'll put it into standby here, and there you go. So we have set up a calibration, we've calculated the calibration, the software will look at the linearity, it will ignore, cancel, carry on, and then we've run a couple of standards, and then the system will then go into standby. Okay, so that is how to set up a calibration in multi-win Pro. Okay, we're ready to set up a sequence after we've just made the method. So we can close this methods window here by right-clicking, close view. So we could load a previous sequence up that was saved, or in this instance we're going to add a new sequence. So this opens the sequence window, and from here we set up each step, the position, the methods, etc. So what we can do as well within this is we can actually, let me just lower this slightly. So we can add a control step. So for example, we can start the instrument with a rinse. We could then run a reverse rinse, for example, and then we're ready to actually set up our sequence. So with this we can set up by method. So within each sequence we can have multiple methods. We can run TN, TC, TOC. This can all be done through this tab here. So add by method. So we've got the two methods that we set up. There was the TC previous one, and then the TOC one that we've just done, TOC. So we'll choose that one. So you can see this has now appeared, and if we right click on this, we have got the option then to add multiple steps. So you're not typing it in for each one, and you can actually, you can have the amount of steps that you're going to create in one go with the base name, and then it will increment a number onto each one. So we've got that. You can delete the steps from here as well. You can export this sequence if you need to. So we'll just add one more line to this. So we'll add this TC method here as well. So you can see now we've got a TOC method in vial 1, then just a TC method in vial 2. And you can see that this is the methods here. We've got the type here. So this is running it as a sample. It could be a calibration. It could run it as a QC check. So this can all be set up here. But over to the right hand side, if we click on this particular step, we've got the step properties. And here it's taking everything from the method, but we can also fine tune it on this right hand side as well. We've got the amount of replicates, and we've got the calibration that it will be using as well. So that's all on the step properties. And the step type, we can set lower and upper limits if we're doing QCs. That can all be set up here with your ppm levels. And then for each one, we will see the results when they start to come out. So setting up a sequence in this is so easy. As I say, it's just a case of adding them with this tab here, and you can obviously, if you right click, you can do multiple steps for each method, so you're not having to type in each one. So that covers the sequence setup.
Okay, so the sample has left the auto sampler. It's gone into the furnace, or maybe the UV cell, depending on what system we've got set up. And just think about the sample path and where it goes to before getting to the detector. So we can open the system up really easily. This is all you need access to, by the way, as a user. All your front end maintenance is here. But the sample comes through. It comes through two different traps here. We have a water trap and a particulate trap. They can both be exchanged very, very simply. Pop the top off, replace. Might be done every few months, or again, depending on throughput, at the annual preventive maintenance visit. We have a Peltier cooler here for the inorganics chamber if we're doing TOC by difference, or maybe just measuring TIC. We have a halide scrubber. So this is brass and copper wool. What we typically say is that once this goes black down one side, that's when you'd normally replace it. Again, push fittings, tube comes out, replace it. Very, very simple to do for the end user. But then on the 33 and the 43 in particular, this is the heart of the system. This syringe pump here. It's a very, very accurate syringe pump, and because we're using flow injection as opposed to direct injection, it needs to be. And you might just think that's a standard syringe pump. But what's really great is behind here, where unfortunately you can't see, there's a sample loop. And what it means is the sample, when we're bringing it in here, only ever gets introduced to the loop itself. It never comes into this syringe pump. Now, there are other designs of systems on the market where the sample does potentially come into the syringe pump. If you've got any particulates or anything like that in your sample, they can damage the transfer line, they can damage the seal, and basically over time you don't get as good repeatability, and also you get carryover with these particulates being left behind in the syringe pump and being carried over to one or the other. Our sample loop, which sits here, means that the sample never comes into contact with the syringe pump, so you can rinse, you can dilute without having any fears of contamination if that's something that concerns you. And then we've just got some other basic pumps here, one going to waste, and this is for the phosphoric acid, for the TIC, the inorganics measurements. But the sample goes to the autosampler, combustion chamber, through the filters, through the halide scrubber, through the inorganics chamber if necessary, on its way to the detector, and it's being carried by one of two carrier gases. We use either oxygen or synthetic air, nice and easy to install, and that's the sort of the sample path, and that's the frontline maintenance. And handing back to Richard, who's going to show you some additional features in the software.
Okay, so we're going to look at some extra software features within MultiWin Pro. So just over to the right hand side in the step properties, you can see we've got intelligent dilution, intelligent volume reduction, parallel purge. So intelligent dilution, intelligent volume reduction, do similar things, which is that if your sample is getting close to or exceeds the calibration range, it will then perform a dilution, or it will reduce the sample volume. So really good for unknown samples. So if you're doing 0 to 100 calibration curve, but you're not sure what your sample concentration is going to be, you might have 500 ppm, for example, then it will run the first sample, see it's outside the range, and then it will reduce the volume and bring it back into the range, and the sample will then be marked up as using the intelligent volume reduction. So just below that you can see parallel purge, and this is if we're doing MPOC. So we would be adding the acid into the vial, and while we are purging the inorganics out of that vial, we will actually begin to sample the previous vial. So it's actually just saving time. So one vial will be getting purged of the inorganics, while the previous one will actually be getting measured. And if we go over to the program menu, we've got the manage users and change users tabs, and if we click on manage users, I will need to log in as admin to do this. Oops, change user. So at the moment the admin password gives us the administration rights for the user management. So you can see here, if I click on admin, administrator, and then you can see what the admin person can actually do: manage users, switch on the instruments, change some settings, show the audit trail, etc. What they can't do is change any calibrations or access results tables, stuff like that. So the admin is basically just for setting up new users. So if we want to set up a new user, we would just click on this box to clear it. We fill in the details here, and then we would add at the bottom. This would then fill out the user box. So for example, the service, you can see service, we've got our own password, and if I click on this service box here, you can see on the role and what rights the service person has. So we can set up methods, calibrations, we can look at results table, etc. So all the tick boxes are the rights that we've got for each role and for each user. So like I say, it's only the administration role that can set up each new user. At the bottom you can see we've got password expiry days. You can tick this if you want it to expire after, for example, 90 days. Okay, so just close that. And that covers the extra features.
Okay, so the sample is being carried across to the detector, and we have a feature in here called Vita gas flow measurements. Now that's really, really important. You're injecting a sample directly or by flow injection at 720 degrees, possibly higher. As a liquid sample, that means it's expanding very rapidly within a fairly confined space with the various tubing mechanisms and what have you. So it's expanding very rapidly, so it changes the gas pressure. So therefore it changes the speed at which the carbon dioxide molecules are being carried across to the detector. So this can vary from injection volume to sample volume to sample matrix from one to the other. So we have this system called the Vita gas flow measurement, which is basically a number of mass flow controllers and mass flow meters within the system that are constantly measuring gas flows, and they can correct and regulate and normalize for this change of pressure.
So it means that we can be very, very sure and very confident in the reproducibility and our accuracy of our results from one sample matrix to one calibration curve to another. In fact, we're so confident it works accurately that rather than taking a master stock standard and making up a calibration curve by diluting them, it will actually take the master stock standard and generate your calibration curve by injecting different volumes. That's how accurate it is. And in fact, with our daily factor within the software, we're actually prepared to say that you can have a calibration curve that will be accurate for at least a year. So the Vita flow measurement is really, really important. But the gas, or the sample is carried across in the gas, as I mentioned earlier, either synthetic air or oxygen. And we have a choice of detectors. So if we're doing carbon, we have a focused near dispersive infrared detector. Now, a near dispersive infrared detector is pretty much industry standard. Everybody recognises that. Where ours is different is that focusing. It has a collimating lens within the detector. This means the light is concentrated on one part. It means you get less corrosion. But most importantly, rather than bouncing off the walls of the detector, all the light is going to the detecting unit. And this means we can work over a much, much wider working range, dynamic range, without diluting our sample down. You can work from the limit of detection, less than 1, 5 or 50 parts per billion, all the way up to 30,000 parts per million without any sample dilution. The detector can cope with that. It's fantastic. And we also have two options for nitrogen. This system actually has a CHD, a chemo detector built in. It's a separate box that sits in here. It's an electrochemical reaction. It's maintenance free. It's the one that we would always recommend someone take rather than the other option. That has a working range of 50 parts per billion up to 100 parts per million. And you basically have one injection, one aliquot, and yet the carbon and the nitrogen results at the same time. The second option for nitrogen is a chemiluminescence detector. That's actually a separate box. It would sit on the side about here. Now that's more sensitive. It goes down to 5 parts per billion, has a wider working range, goes up to 200 parts per million. It's also more expensive. People will use that normally if they need that working range, that lower LOD, or typically they're following a method that states you must use a chemiluminescence detector. But those are the detectors, the focused near dispersive infrared for the carbon, the two options with the nitrogen. Now, it's worth pointing out that the carbon detector and the furnace are so robust, so well made. They both have extended warranties. They come with, as standard, 5-year warranties. So very, very well made and designed. And obviously what we've talked about here is liquid analysis, liquid autosampler injecting. We have options for solids analysis. There's something called the HT1300, which is a pretty manual way of putting a sample into a ceramic boat. We're combusting it, and then basically the sample, the CO2 is carried across and uses the detector, which is in one of the multi-NC units. You can automate that by adding an autosampler to it if you so wish. And there's even options for people in the pharma industry where they can do total swab combustion. There's a separate furnace that sits on the side that allows you to combust the swab for things like cleaning validation. So, like I said, though the focus has been on liquid, there are quite a number of options for the solids as well. That pretty much wraps it up. We've talked about the hardware. Richard's gone through the software. So thank you very much for your time. It's now over to the Q&A section. Thanks again.
Okay. So, oh, good. A few more people have joined. It's weird because I couldn't see the screen through that, so I had no idea. Karen, I apologise for ringing you. So I got an email from my colleague saying, please ring this person on this number. It's about the webinar. So, and it's quite strange ringing you up and hearing Richard's voice in the background. So I do apologise, but I was just sort of doing what I was told. Okay, so let's just see if anyone's put anybody in there, because I actually spoke to a couple of people this week who've already asked me some questions, which I said I would answer here and now. Okay, that's fine. No one's put anything in there. Okay, so no one's put anything in the Q&A. Okay, let's just see if that loads. So, okay. No, I don't think there's going to be anything in there. Okay, so there were some questions we got asked let's say in the previous couple of days by a couple of people who I think are on this call. So I guess the first one was what training comes with the system. Pretty simple. It's kind of what you need. So we have the two dedicated engineers. Some of you know them, but Richard and Gareth. There's normally a north-south split within the UK. But Richard is also the applications person. So they will install the system, they will do the basic training on it, and then Gareth can certainly do some familiarization training, some introductory training. If you then require more applications, sort of method development training, Richard's there for that. We'd normally say for most people, it's a day with installation and familiarization, and most people then normally only need at most another day's training. If you need a bit more than that, it's fine. If for some reason you start going down the route of we need 5, 6, 7 days training, then there would effectively be, we'd have to put some kind of charge on that. But initially, it's very much, we'll make sure you're up and running, got a working method, etc., etc., and there's no additional charge for that. So we've got a question from Karen saying, how does it cope with saline samples? Richard, I'll give my answer. Feel free to disagree. It's two kinds of answers to that. So if we'd always say go with the direct injection system, and that's purely because it takes a smaller injection volume, therefore it's injecting less onto the catalyst. Of course, if you're working at very, very low levels, you then might inject a higher volume. You look more at the flow injection because there's an overlap. It normally copes very, very well, but with the new system, they've actually developed what's called a salt kit. So this is a series of sort of ferrules and filters that go on top of the combustion chamber, which does, to be fair, dramatically increase the amount of samples you can run through without any potential damage on the catalyst. There's also things like high temperature mats and things that you can put on top of the catalyst. So it copes very well. It's more a case of what do you have? Do you have just a high temperature mat? Do you need the salt kit in order to basically increase the amount of injections you get before you need to replace the catalyst? But certainly it copes with it very well, and both systems cope pretty well in general. I hope that answers your question, Karen. One of the other questions I got was, and I'll leave this one to Richard because Richard knows it better than I, what service contracts do we offer with the system? So over to you, Rich.
Okay, so yeah, service contracts. We have two different options. So one will be just a yearly service, which basically is just us coming out doing the PM, also giving support throughout the year. But the second option will be the PM, and then you get reduction on parts used and also the labour and travel costs as well. So yeah, we've got those two different options. Also with the, if you do purchase an analytical Jena TOC, you will have free upgrades for life with the TOC. The only exception is obviously going from the multi-win to the multi-win Pro, because it is basically two different pieces of software. But if you purchase the multi-win Pro, you will get every upgrade after that free of charge. So yeah, those are the contract options. Yep.
So I don't know if you already noticed there, but I actually fell off my chair when Richard said free of charge forever. So but I got back up pretty quick. So, but yeah, it's pretty generous in that sense. Again, a question I got asked this week by an existing user and related to sort of pricing and upgrades is how much does the new software cost? It costs, there's not a fixed price. I think Jena are quite keen to get some existing users switched over to the new one. We're talking around about £2,500, just people are aware of that. But if anybody is interested in the new, just upgrading the software, I think there's a deal to be had if someone goes, oh, we'd like to be an early adopter of this. It's also worth bearing in mind that there is a certain age of system we can go back to. I think it's around about maybe 6 or 7 years. If your system's older than that, it may be that it struggles to cope with the new software. It's also with firmware numbers. So if someone is interested and they think the system is a bit older than that, then please just give me a shout, and we can look into that and advise whether your system's suitable. I guess another question was just because what I'm conscious of is we've gone through the hardware and the software, but we've not gone through every single facet that's there. If people have specific questions, please feel free to get in touch. But it's kind of, okay, I guess just some highlights about what's the differences between the new software, the Multiwin Pro, and the old one, which doesn't always come across when we're doing these kind of webinars. So it's just a couple of things I wanted to just sort of emphasize really. First one is obviously a new GUI, a new interface, which when you actually see it in action, it is a lot more friendly, a lot more intuitive, a lot easier to use than the current very functional Multiwin software. You then got things like the ability to have correlation factors for your CODs and your BODs, which is becoming more common. People are looking to switch from one to the other. The fact that you can have or run different methods just on one sample. Can't do that in the old ones. You remember MPOC and, for example, TC on one sample, which is kind of quite nice. You can now, which to me just seems very, very obvious, within the sequence, you have the calibration as well as the method. They're not run separately. It makes it easier. The calibration curve is plotted as we go along. You don't have to wait until your fourth calibration point comes out to work out have you got a decent calibration or not. For those people that use the current system, there's no offline mode. You can get access to your samples that have been run there and then, open them up, the data's there. There's actually a lot more data that's now displayed as well, a lot more data that's given on all the results as well, but basically no offline mode, which I think is really useful. In terms of being sort of being able to use on the fly samples, people coming in saying I need this run as a priority, there's now much more sort of flexibility in terms of where you can put that in the queue, how quickly you can run it and things like that. There's some more dilution options, intelligent dilution, automatic dilution. I guess the other one is, which actually we got asked this by a customer a couple of months ago, is very important to them. Can you have different units for say blanks versus samples? And basically all of the units you now put in are editable text fields. So most people would like to have them the same, but this particular customer wanted something different recorded for their blank. So you can now do that. So those are some just the high level sort of differences. There's a lot more even when you start looking beneath the system as well. The one thing I wanted to mention, which we just touched upon, was the CFR. So it is 21 CFR compliant, and it's worth pointing out that people, if they look at 21 CFR, that automatically comes with something called Analytic Yames file protection. And that's something that works in the background, has to be set up in conjunction with your IT company or IT people, and that basically works with Windows. And it means that you cannot get access, or the way it's set up, you can't access the database even if it's saved remotely or saved or archived. So the software itself is 21 CFR, but also it protects the data. It can't be deleted, can't be overwritten, and can't be got rid of. So it's even safer than it used to be in terms of data integrity. Rich, was there anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. So yeah, I mean, you did mention the one of the main selling points to this is the being able to set up the calibration, have the software check the linearity of the calibration. You can then choose to ignore, cancel, or carry on, and then you can go straight into a sequence. And at the end of the sequence, you can have the system turn off the gases, go into standby, or just completely switch off. So your sequence is a lot more user friendly, compared to the previous multi-win.
Okay. Yeah, and you've used. Well, I've seen it in action. Obviously, you've used it. So, okay. Unless anybody's got some other questions or put some in the Q&A, we will kind of sort of let you go. Couple of very quick things. As I said at the beginning, we will send out a link for this. I apologise for that sort of bit that almost seemed like it was lagging or something around about 8.5 minutes in. We don't know why that happened, but we'll look into it. Obviously, something was slightly funny with the audio. And when we send the link out, we're also going to send out a very simple feedback form. So the Microsoft feedback form, click on the link. I think it's about maybe 8 questions, just things about the webinar. So my colleagues do these webinars as well. So it's useful to get feedback from people who actually attend them. What's good, what's bad, what works, what doesn't. So please do respond to that. If you have any questions, please feel to get in touch, either myself or Richard, or you've got all our contact details. Apart from that, thank you very much for your time. I will be in touch with each of you, and have a great rest of the week. Thanks very much. Take care.
Yes, thank you.